Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to take a breath. We're going to dabble into fiction. We're going to go into our dreams and the life maybe in which we thought about, which we experienced, and maybe we said, oh, I would just love to have this life. And we sit down and dreamingly write about it. We think about it. Perhaps we go into sleep, and we venture into it within our dream time. What is an altered timeline all about? Is it something that we wish to have that we don't have in our regular life? Is it something we step into to be able to validate our thoughts or our deepest dreams? Or perhaps it's just something to be able to take us on a lovely, delightful journey. Today, what we're going to be talking about is a wonderful book. It's a fiction book, but it is a wonderful read, probably a weekend or so. And it just takes you on a gentle journey. It's not pushing anything down you. You have to do it this way. Make sure you do it that way. Oh, look at all of their mistakes. It's just a gentle, loving story about conditional and unconditional love. And can you find the threads within the book? Today, my guest is Dan Darwin. The book is Love and Betrayal, The Secrets We Keep. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
And it's a pleasure to be here.
So glad to have you because, as I said, this book is a wonderful, weekend read. And don't you think that sometimes we look at a fiction book and we say, oh, I don't know. But really, it's all about the unknown, right?
It is indeed. And the beauty of fiction is it allows writers and readers to think and to imagine and to conceive that they might have different experiences, different adventures, and different episodes in the lives that they lead. What if this had happened in their life instead of what actually happened? What if your life or others' lives took a new direction that you didn't see coming at all?
I always think of it. People say, oh, but this is my life. This is reality. This is truth. This is my belief. All of this whole story about validation, blah, 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 And I always tell them that your life is truly an illusion. It's what's created. It's what you perceive. It's what you see. That's what gives us this uniqueness, our human experience. So if life truly is an illusion all the time, is not fiction truly not far of a stretch?
Fiction is not a stretch at all. Fiction takes readers, again, on an imaginative journey. It allows them to see and experience the possibilities that maybe they thought about, maybe they dreamed about, maybe they wondered about. But in many cases, those adventures and those different road trips can indeed become a reality. Fiction, someone once said, fiction is a great lie. It's all imagination. But it reveals truths about the actual lives we live or the actual lives we want to live. It tells us more about ourselves and other characters than reality does.
Yeah, it's so interesting because last night I was totally, being a shaman and a psychic medium, I definitely go out of body at nighttime. I lay my head down. I'm gone somewhere else. I don't even turn over in bed, and I can tell you the whole timeline, the story that I was in, what was going on. Last night it was very distinctive. And it was about a war, and it was about two kids, and they had gone down the street, and they shouldn't have gone there, and I was trying to get them back and everything. And if you think about it, many times some very wonderful writers will say, I take and capture from what my dreams are telling me, and I just then close my eyes and I go on another journey. I think sometimes we need an escape from our lives, from what we believe is the truth and the reality, because the truth and the reality seems to be what other people are telling you about your life. Perhaps?
I think that is absolutely true. And the beauty of this novel is you get to speculate and wonder about the characters in this book. The characters are everyday people. Charles, a newspaper reporter. Wendy, his girlfriend, then his wife, who is a watercolor artist. And you get to speculate and wonder about the adventures they take. They meet and fall in love in Texas. They face a career challenge because he gets a job offer in faraway North Dakota, which is colder and which is a different environment entirely. What if that happened to your listeners who are a couple? What would they do?
Right.
How would they cope with that particular challenge? And I can tell you they have a decision to make very early in the novel about whether or not they are going to move to a new state, start a new life, start a new venture. And after that, there's more. They're going to be tested again.
Yeah, you know what I really think about the book, Dan? I wrote it down. I said it's about the simple life. Your book is truly not like overly fluffy. Sometimes there's so much text and descriptive trying to get you to drag you into the position of being in there, when in actuality, your book is about the simple life, so you're actually already there. And I think it's like a real story, and it's very concisely written. You have so many chapters, you're like, boom, here it is, here's the story. Next time, here's another story. Instead of blah, 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 you know what I mean? Sometimes you get lost in it, and you're going, oh my gosh, do I need to go back and reread the page? And your book is very concise about this. It kind of takes you on this space, but it says, here's this moment, here's the story. Turn the page, next moment, here's the next story. It's not something you have to overlay all the way through, perhaps?
I think that's accurate, and I appreciate your reaction to the story as well. And you're right, the chapters are short, they're episodic.
Right.
I take you into the lives of Charles and Wendy and the people they meet, particularly Wendy's best friend, a longtime girlfriend, Penny Lane. And you get a glimpse of their lives, their challenges, their adventures, and I think many, many of your listeners will relate to these people.
Yeah. You know what I think, Dan? Right in the beginning, we don't want to give away the story now because it is a wonderful read, but right from the very beginning when they got married and then he bought the house, and she said, "You did it without me." And I think right there, it was kind of like, it was never firmly that they were 100% overmeshed in each other. Do you know what I'm saying? It was that there was always a little bit where they were going to keep it a secret. There was always something. Something just didn't, in other words, their relationship wasn't a lock and key, We're going to eat, breathe, and be each other the entire time. There was always that little bit that was out there. Don't you think that's a thread that plays out through the story? That is absolutely a thread that plays out through the story, and you're very perceptive to pick up on that. That decision early in the book, the dispute and the decision to buy the home, and she was not involved in that decision, opens a little bit of a fissure in their relationship. And there are other secrets throughout the novel that they keep from each other. They're a couple. They're married. They're in love. But no relationship is perfect. And this is a look at a very human and very vulnerable relationship. Yeah, I think sometimes, is it conditional or is it unconditional love? And I think perhaps they had, they really, unconditional, I'm going to accept you for whatever you are, and I'm going to be there because I do love you, and then there's no but. Do you know what I mean? So perhaps they had an unconditional love within their marriage, but there was still that condition because they said, "I love you, but I still don't. I don't hate you today." And I think that word was very, very clear all the way through the book. And the reason that I picked up on that, and I said, so is it unconditional or is it conditional? And I think I kind of was asking myself that the entire way through the book. Do you think your characters had a glimpse of that?
Oh, I think that's an excellent question and an excellent observation. And you may be right on the conditional love. I'm going to leave it to the readers ultimately to decide that as they get into the story, as they get into the characters, as they get into the challenges that they face as their lives unfold. And their lives go from, we meet them in their mid-20s, and like a lot of relationships, they age, they get older, they go through challenges.
Well, you know what I think is really great about the book, Dan? It said definitely leave it for the readers. I think that's a wonderful idea to be able to go through the book to have that question about it. Because when we're looking at something deeper, we say then, what is conditional or unconditional love? And is that the thread that holds people together? Because if you look at it, while there were many challenges that they had, many missteps, perhaps, and we say, should I do this or should I not do this? They still showed up. And they still showed up, but were they fully showing up? And I think sometimes we need to ask ourselves the question, when we get into a relationship, do we need to jump into it 1,000%, lock and key, all this conditional, unconditional love, till death do we part, blah, blah, blah. We have to, have all of our answers and our questions and bounce everything back and forth. In other words, man, do we need to overlay on the other person and be the other person to have a good relationship? Is that always necessary? I think people quest for that, but then they realize, maybe I don't need that. Perhaps? Yeah,
very good point. Later in the novel, after the couple has met in their 20s, grown through their 30s, 40s, and they're into their 50s, perhaps even a little bit later, Charles makes this observation. They're having breakfast in their home, a home where they didn't even envision themselves being 30, 40 years ago. And Charles says, we're human. We're a couple. We made mistakes, lots of them. And I'm speaking just for myself, honey, but we're still here. We're still a couple. And she says, that we are indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I look back at my own relationships. I'm almost 70 myself. And I look at it and I say, I think, people will say, well, what kind of a relationship is, grandkids will ask that stuff. And I'll say, oh, we're just fine, And you think, do you say you're your significant other, you're your roommate, you're your companion, you're your loving partner, you're your husband, your wife? I think all of those labels tend to have a kind of list below them that you check it off and see which one you're in. When in essence, I think if you're growing with someone for decades, you say, we may have been all of them. We may have been a few in each different time. And almost it becomes very fluid where you pass through as your evolution, in those human lifetime, perhaps.
Very, very good point. And you may wish to ask yourself the question, do you really need a label? Do you need to refer to your significant other as husband, boyfriend, significant other, my partner? Is the label important, or is what's important how you perceive and deal with a relationship on an everyday basis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's about whether or not you show up. And when I always think about that, whether or not you show up, because throughout the book, the characters showed up in different ways. and showed up their other aspects of engaging in the world with their friends, other people in their lives, in the way in which they did their work, in the way in which they engaged with each other, and the way in which they also encompass the areas in which they moved to. So I think of it, I say, is this something that's just innate in all of us? And if we truly did a life reflection, we would truly notice that too within our story?
People have to figure out who they are. People have to figure out who their significant other is and what they want and what they desire in a relationship and what they want and desire out of life on a daily basis and on a long-term basis. And this novel will provoke people into thinking about those questions. What do you want on a daily basis? What do you need on a long-term basis? And how do you expect this all to play out in your life?
What about the idea of forgiveness and regrets? That's very important because it also has a thread in this book about forgiveness and regrets. And I think the idea is that when life does not play out as you anticipate it, what do you do then? Do you just throw it all in the handbasket and say, I'm going to walk away?
Ooh, another really good point. And you're absolutely correct. The characters both fall prey to temptation. They meet other people, and events unfold, and they reach the point after that where they have to come to grips with it. And as you said, do you forgive and move on, or do you walk away? And I think many of your listeners can relate because they've probably been in that situation. And Wendy actually says, I can walk away from this relationship. I can start over on my own. And then she says, no, I'm not going to do that. That would be the cowardly way out. I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to see if I can make this work.
Yeah. And I think also, too, when we talk about secrets, I always think of it as a grudge. You know, when you have a secret, there's always this grudge that you've got inside of you, or some kind of vengeance, or something that you're holding about it back because. And I think every time you use a sentence and you say something and then you use the word because, it's trying to justify the means, so to speak. Do you think that there's a lot of that? I'm doing this because, I'm seeing this because, I'm sharing this because. You know, there's a lot of because in the book, perhaps?
We all have different motivations in our lives and in our relationships, and how much you share of your life with your partner, your husband, your significant other is very, very interesting. Do you share 90%?
Right.
Do you share 95%? Or do you share 100%? Is the significant other in your life so close to you that you're intimate even intellectually and emotionally? Or do you hold back little things, little details, little nuances, little secrets? Maybe we all have secrets we keep. But that's up to your listeners, and that's up to their lives and how they relate to other people around them. What secrets do you keep? And as you said, why and why?
Right. Yeah, you know what I also thought about the book, Dan, is that the character, Wendy, being an artist, she was so very in touch with this, as we say, this creative part, the one side of your brain. And then her husband was, a writer. In a way, he was on the creative side, but he was more on the intellectual side, the more side. You show me it's real, I'll believe it kind of idea. And I think that if we look at both sides of the brain, can sometimes those people actually perceive or intermesh or be able to touch into that intimate moment of our own consciousness, maybe?
That's a good observation. Wendy is an artist, so she is perhaps more right brain oriented and thinks creatively, but she lives in the real world too. She has to turn her artistic tendencies into paintings because that's what she does. She's an artist. Unless she's painting and creating and doing something real, her life doesn't have a real meaning. Charles, on the other hand, is a newspaper reporter, and what drives him is the desire for news and information. He has to know who, what, when, where, and why. So he might be a little bit more left brain oriented. So can a couple like this actually complement each other and communicate and be on the same page with each other? And sometimes they are, like a lot of couples, and sometimes they aren't. Again, like a lot of couples.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so vitally important to understand that there are different ways in which we can engage with each other, but also to find those little nuances and be able to say, can we celebrate them? Because he does get into, yes, her paintings and shares of stories about her paintings, and he is involved and asks questions and is very interested. And she is interested in his work as well. I think sometimes when you have people that are on the other sides, they're like, oh, yeah, that's what she does, and like, whatever. You know, we even hear the word come out of their mouth, whatever, at the end of the sentence, you know, because they don't quite understand it. They don't quite get it. But they still find some common thread in which they're able to have a relationship, perhaps?
Yep, indeed. And they make an effort to communicate and to relate and to understand what each other does. And just like in real life, it's not always perfect. Sometimes they stumble. Sometimes they don't actually completely get it, but they make an effort to be on the same page with the other person.
You know what I loved about the book, too, Dan, and I said it, this is a great holiday read, you know, on a weekend or a long weekend, is that you're able to say, irregardless of whatever is going on in my life, when I jump into the book and read it and I go, oh, this is awesome, it kind of tends to, as I say, heal the little tendrils of your heart. Because you can say, oh, isn't that awesome? Oh, isn't that great? So sometimes when we have our real life, we have a lot of, oh my gosh, this isn't working, this isn't right, oh, I'm annoyed, or just really, this isn't working today or whatever, and we tend to retreat into reading. And when we retreat into reading, we say, was that really a big deal in the first place? Was I making it something more out of it than it had to be? Or perhaps I can say, I can be responsible for healing my own heart. And I think that's where fiction books really come in, don't you think?
Absolutely. Fiction is a terrific and a wonderful escape. You can put aside your everyday worries, your everyday routines, your everyday frustrations, and you can disappear into the lives of other characters. And you can discover from other characters hidden truths, hidden meanings, hidden nuances about your own life. And you can relate to them and say, well, I wouldn't have done that, or I might have done that, or I like the way Wendy handled this situation, or I don't like the way Wendy handled that situation. I think I would have done it somewhat differently. That's the beauty of fiction. You get to disappear down the rabbit hole and engage in other people's lives and adventures and episodes.
You know what I loved about the book, too, and I love this, Dan, is that there was also a common thread in there where she had a friend that she called. And I think that's so vitally important. Sometimes we need to have a mediator in the middle. Let me bounce something off you to see if it's coming back to me as it is real, or as how I'm seeing it. Or perhaps you can offer me some alternatives or possibilities. Do you think we all need to have that at some point in our life?
Absolutely. And Wendy's best friend is a woman named Penny Lane. They have kind of grown up together. They worked in the same environment, and they have stayed close over the years. So Wendy has the opportunity to share what is happening with her life and bounce it off Penny Lane. And Penny Lane offers reaction, feedback, guidance, support, sometimes criticism. And then, I don't want to give it away, but then something happens to Penny Lane. Penny Lane at one point is a little frustrated with her own life. Nothing's going on in her own life. And then, just almost like it was magic, something happens to Penny Lane. And it's an amazing little epiphany toward the end of the novel.
Right. Yeah, I think we all have those epiphanies when we get into our older age. We're going, well, holy crap, I never expected that. How did that happen? You know, I think that everybody has that at some point. You know, for myself, my patients, when I talk to them, or patients when we're at the end of life and we're having a discussion or a conversation, they come up on those times of the epiphanies in their life. Well, you know what? One day I can tell you this happened. And boy, did it change. You can always find the fork in the road, perhaps.
We all need a little bit of unexpected in our lives. We have a lot of expected. We know this has to be done. We know the bills have to be paid. We know we have to prepare dinner, and we know we have to keep the house clean. But everyone needs a little bit of unexpected. Didn't see that coming. Isn't that neat? Isn't that wonderful? And sometimes that little bit of unexpected can result in a major transformation in your life, which is pretty much what happens to Penny Lane.
Yeah. And it's also the unexpected, and we're like, I never thought that was going to happen. I never thought that was coming down the road. Oh, my gosh, what do I do now? And I think of it, even as I have a visual just now when I said that, it's when you take out your pen and it's not working anymore and you throw it in the garbage and you say, you know what, now I need a new pen. Perhaps I need a new book. Maybe I need a new window to sit by to write a new life story. And that's how I always see it. Perhaps you need a new adventure. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you need a new twist in the road. Perhaps you need to explore the unexpected. Perhaps you need to explore that possibility in the back of your mind that you always have thought about but never really fully pursued. Yeah. In closing to it, you know, it's so funny, Dan, you say about the character, her name being Penny Lane. Instantly, of course, we hear the song in our heads. If we're old enough, Penny Lane, right?
It was not a coincidence, although Penny Lane spells her name differently than the actual Penny Lane. But it's not a coincidence. It's a fun, imaginative name that I think many of your listeners and many of the readers out there will wonder and think about and relate to.
Absolutely. I think, you know, sometimes we take these little words or these little places that we end up becoming or being, and we say they are just, I call them little crystals in the walk and the path of life. Because you look at it and you go, I know that from somewhere else, or that's calling to me, or I'm being guided, or maybe it's saying, here, sit for a while and find the joy in the moment. So I think your characters in the book have so many joy crystal moments in their story, and that's what we really want to hold on in our lifetime. Everything else that goes on is it's just sounds, perhaps.
Perhaps indeed. Perhaps those crystals and those little moments and those key moments in our lives are really what's important, and everything else is just a distraction. Right. Just noise, just static on the radio that doesn't really matter at all.
Yeah, it's like, how can you create your own song of your life? And I think so many times people will say, oh, you're romanticizing it. It wasn't like that at all. And I'll say, you know what? From my point of view, yes, this is what it is. And really then we're really circling back to the beginning of this conversation. Is our human life, our perception of the story in which we engage in, truly an illusion because it's our own perception to feel, experience, and hold as our own life story. Yes?
Yes. What you feel in your heart, what your objective is in life, how you want to lead your life, who you want in your life, and the decisions you make along the way, along with the secrets you keep from your partner and your friends around you, will have a very significant long-term effect on how your life and how your story, how the story of your life plays out and unfolds.
Yeah, because as I share with everyone, it's really what the soul and spirit experiences in the human story. You know, so many times people will say, but you only have one lifetime, you have to do this. And it's like, honey, I have tons of lifetimes. I'm an eternal soul. This is just a chapter in my book. So I think sometimes we have to say, can we delight in the moment? Can we enjoy a wonderful fiction book? Can we step into someone else's story? Can we feel and experience our own? And that is the joy of this lifetime. Yes?
That is absolutely and totally correct. I agree 110%.
That's really awesome. Dan, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Absolutely. The novel is Love and Betrayal, The Secrets We Keep. You can find it by searching for that title and my name, writer Dan Darwin, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a website called Smashwords.
Very good. Well, Dan, it was a pleasure to have you with us here today. I absolutely loved it. I think it's a great holiday read. We're coming up into the springtime. Many times people will say, I just need to freshen up. I need to clear my air. So it's a great thing to be able to sit out on the porch and read. So I thank you so much for sharing this today.
It was an absolute pleasure to be with you, and I enjoyed the conversation, and I enjoyed the interview, and you asked some really good questions, and I think your listeners will relate to this story very intimately.
Yes, they absolutely will. Thank you so much for joining us, Dan. It was such a pleasure.
Indeed, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. If you'd like to find out more information about Dan Darwin, again, the book is Love and Betrayal, The Secrets We Keep. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to the website for more information. Check the book on Amazon. And it's truly about being able to say, we are in this time, we're having experiences, we are enjoying our lives, we're having grudges, we're having secrets. It's all about how we are engaging in the world around us. Enjoy it. Find the crystals. Hold on to those. Those are what heals your heart, and everything else is just noise. Enjoy the book. It's a wonderful read for the spring, and I hope to be able to have another one of Dan's books on, perhaps for our summer read. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Till tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.